Now, the Cambridgeshire Deaf Association says it's helped a record number of people during the pandemic. It's been one of the most challenging times for the charity that was established more than 100 years ago. Andy Palmer is the chief executive. Morning, Andy.
Good morning, Dotty.
What in particular has made life so tough for you as a charity and also for the people that you help during the pandemic?
I think it's just the wave of support that people needed during that time. And I think for deaf people, a lot of face-to-face support is needed. And during the pandemic, people couldn't get out and about. So we were receiving a lot more support that people needed via kind of video chats, via text, people wanting information about what they could and couldn't do. Because let's face it, during the pandemic, a lot of information wasn't available in sign language, and it was a matter of life and death. So I was very pleased that CDA was around to support people. And I think I just want to say thanks to the taxpayers in Cambridgeshire because, you know, through the local authorities and through the police, they support CDA. So thanks to you for helping us out.
What kind of ways have you found of helping people who have difficulty hearing? I mean, the fact that masks have become such a feature of life when a lot of people who can't hear very well rely so much on lip reading, I guess that's a barrier you've had to overcome.
It's massive. It's massive. I mean, it's not too difficult to put ourselves in the position of someone who wears a mask. Imagine if coronavirus was transmitted via the ear canal, and in order to go out of the house, you had to plug your ears up so you couldn't hear anything. Imagine how disorientating that would be and how difficult life would become for people who rely on their hearing to just go about day-to-day business. And that is a situation that, to be honest, tens of thousands of people in Cambridgeshire have to contend with. And so it's not just the day-to-day issue that people have to contend with. We've got an increase in referrals for people with issues with mental health and emotional support. So at the moment we're kind of getting, or during the pandemic year, there was a referral once a week for people looking for emotional support or with mental health issues too. And because people also were almost stuck indoors such a lot, we also saw a bit of an increase in people who were suffering from domestic abuse. So it's not just about the virus. Some of those issues are still ongoing. There's a lot of reasons why people might need support as a result of it.
And I guess if you are dealing with some of those issues, if you are in a violent situation or if you're dealing with anxiety or some other mental health problem and you have hearing loss, presumably the type of counselling, the type of help that you need, it needs to be quite closely tailored.
There's a couple of things about that that's really interesting. One is just the language barrier, so that a counsellor would need to be fluent in British Sign Language. That's an extremely rare skill around the country. And secondly, if you're dealing with a counsellor, it's useful for them to have some kind of cultural knowledge of the community that you're coming from. And that's also kind of rare. So yeah, it's the same story for deaf people in a lot of ways, that when they want support for a particular issue or want to access a service, the support just isn't there. And that's why I guess we've become so busy, because a lot of other organisations just aren't really accessible for deaf people to get in touch with. So my appeal really is for any organisation or anybody who has deaf customers or deaf clients, feel free to get in touch and we're happy to support you to make your service more accessible, because genuinely in this regard, you know, I'd prefer to be less busy if other organisations were making themselves more accessible.
Yeah, I guess that more people contacting you for help, in one way, it's sad to hear that so many people are in a position of needing help, but it must be a strength in some way for the Cambridgeshire Deaf Association, because you then know where your community are and can bring them together and introduce them to each other and help them more.
There's definitely a big social aspect to the deaf community, and we're involved in that. And it does mean that we have connections with people and we can let them know about information or let them know of any useful talks that are coming up and share things with people. So from that point of view, yeah, it's really, really good. And I think we're lucky in Cambridgeshire because we've had such good support from the local authority over a few years. We've got very generous people here and we've had some trust support us too. And the Police and Crime Commission is also funding us because they can see the value of our work. We've got a lot of capacity of people in the county who are experts in the field. So at CDA, we've got 40 staff and 35 of those staff are profoundly deaf people who use British Sign Language. So we've got a very deep well of knowledge and skill and experience in the area, which means we can deliver these services. And I think that sets us apart from many other parts of the country because of that investment in people and skills. So on the one hand, you know, I'd prefer not to be I prefer everyone to be accessible and will always support people. But on the other hand, we have a sort of deep well of knowledge and compassion in this county, which means we can provide support when people need it.
How did you get into working in this field, Andy? Was deafness in your family when you were growing up, or how did you come to specialise in this area?
Well, my first language was sign language. I was born into a deaf family. Mum and dad are deaf, and they've got deaf brothers and sisters. All my generation are all hearing, so my brothers and sisters and cousins, and then I guess my son's generation are all hearing, except my son, who was born deaf. And then I just kind of got involved in volunteering for the local Deaf Children's Society, and then got a job for another charity and set up Peterborough United's deaf football teams. And now I work with the FA and their England national teams and do the job for CDA. So I'm lucky that I get to kind of work in an industry which I really care about, and with people that, I've kind of grown up with and loved all my life. So I see myself being very privileged, but that's how I got into it.
And I know that you're a posh fan, Andy. How are you feeling about tonight, Birmingham City?
Well, I think we've just got to keep everything crossed, haven't we, for the posh this season now. So obviously looking forward to the game. But, good luck to the team tonight.
Do you want to try saying that you're looking forward to the game and making it a bit more convincing, or...? I'm really looking forward to the game.
Well, I am. To be honest with you, my mindset is I'm a complete optimist, so I kind of hope for the best, but... always expect the worst, and that way you're never too disappointed, are you?
Good man. Nice to talk to you, Andy. Take care, and let's hope that it is a big away win for Peterborough United that we are celebrating here on Breakfast tomorrow morning. Andrew Palmer, the Chief Executive of the Cambridgeshire Deaf Association. They've had a tough time during the pandemic, but they are now helping a record number of local people with hearing loss.